is Jen Ibbenson. I'm the Director of Library Services here at Northeast Community College and the Program Director for the NEA Big Read that's been going on in Northeast Nebraska. The NEA Big Read is a program of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with Arts Midwest, and Northeast was selected as one of 62 organizations across the country to participate this year. So we are very grateful and honored that we were selected. And I'm also very thankful to our local support, including our sponsorship from Healthy Blue. And we have bags, if you like those blue bags over there, you should take some home with you. Healthy Blue is our exclusive healthcare sponsor. And we also have local sponsorship from the Norfolk Area Community Foundation Fund and the Norfolk Area Visitors Bureau. And then we have partners throughout the community and into our service area as well. Many libraries, the Norfolk Public Library has been wonderful about hosting events and was instrumental in planning a lot of our programming, and also the Norfolk Arts Center and the Elkhorn Valley Museum were as well, and the League of Human Dignity and Beth Bishop is here, has been really an amazing partner. So could not have done these things without all of these people and more. So really grateful. And I've been counting down to this day for many, many months. And so I am delighted that you are all here. And it is finally time for me to do this introduction. Rebekah Taussig is a Kansas City writer and educator with her doctorate in creative nonfiction and disability studies. She spent most of her life immersed in the world of writing and reading because she believes the words we use and the stories we tell matter. You can find her writing about the nuanced experience of disability on her Instagram, Sitting Pretty, or in her memoir by the same name. Please join me in welcoming Rebekah Taussig. My microphone. You feel this is working, but yeah, that's it, right? How's the sound?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. I have to say I've been like traveling to lots of books in different towns, and talking about my book, and this one feels really special to me. I feel like I'm just like hearing all of the ways that you've been engaged this book and the themes of this book as a community, and the things you've been doing are so cool. And I know that so many people have put energy into that. I just want to thank you for that from the bottom of my heart. I feel like right now, and even kind of just my whole trip here, feels like something I want to freeze and put into a snow globe that I can like show my younger self, right? Look at this cool town in Nebraska, and like the stories that they're reading and the conversations that they're having, and it's surreal. I think even just showing myself like 5 years ago, that would have been really awesome to me. It's strange to think about the first seeds of this book being planted like right 8 years ago on social media of all places. I know there's lots of things to load about social media, but there's these pockets of beauty right in this book. Really started in that space, and I had to go back and look. But the very, very first post that I did was about going to the Arches National Park and taking in the majesty of that nature scene, and being really grateful that I was with a partner who also likes to experience that majesty from the air conditioning in my car. But pretty quickly I started moving into a lot more vulnerable storytelling in that space. And I started writing about things like it felt like to struggle to walk with my walker in front of my then new boyfriend. Like what that felt like. And I wrote about like the never ending ongoing frustration of trying to find an affordable, accessible place to live in Kansas City. And I remember right away being really floored that other people cared to read about that. I didn't even really quite know what those stories meant to myself, and I was really surprised that other people seemed invested in that. And I think that if there's one thing that I've learned through the experience of writing the stories of this book is that These stories are very personal to me, but I've learned that they're about so much more than me. I think that there's something just deeply human about the experience of disability and writing about that experience. And I've been just surprised and by all of the ways that people connect to these stories or find value in these stories. And I think that there's a hunger for complicated, nuanced stories of disability and living in a human body. And so I just want to thank you for hearing about these stories with me. And I'm going to read some to you tonight. I picked a few little excerpts from throughout the book, and if anyone wants to read along, I'll try to let you know what page I'm on if you're a read along kind of person. But I thought I would open just from the beginning of the book. Oh, and by the way, so I'm going to read like 5 little excerpts from the book, and then I think we should have like a good amount of time to have a hearty Q&A, which is my favorite part. So I hope that as we're sitting here tonight, if anything comes into your mind that you want to talk about, I'm 100% here to go in whatever direction you're interested in. So no, that's kind of all right. So I'm starting with the first chapter, which opens with a big family gathering at my parents' house, and my brother asks me this question: what is your writing about, and what do you hope it brings to the world? Which is the literal question that he asked me as we're speaking in foreign pastoral on third place, because like the Taussigs don't do small talk, so we were going to go there. And from there in the book, I sort of kind of go into this backdrop of my childhood and what it was like to grow up in this kind of whirlwind of a family. And I describe us as like my siblings and I, like puppies in a box, like we're just sort of clamoring over each other. And that's kind of where I'm going to pick up this reading. You can get back there, your mic up a little bit. So during this window of crawling in the mud and scrambling up to my top bunk, I believed that I was royally beautiful. Oh, and I think Adrian mentioned I like recently paralyzed with this from cancer. Okay. So during this window of crawling in the mud and scrambling up to my top bunk, I believed that I was royally beautiful. That was good and fully capable of contributing to the group. Interesting to feel the most regal during the days of mud and clamoring and scooting across the floor. I choreographed my own weird, passionate dances, wore frilly dress-up gowns around town, and pretended I was married to the prince. I felt talented and dreamed big. I floated in my own bubble, a universe where everything glistened and glowed, and I wore a crown sparkling with jewels. I believed everything I did, the way I moved my body, the way I moved, the roundabout paths I took, was right. I figured out how to do all the things I wanted, and I didn't see my methods as strange or sad. I knew that kids I didn't know stared at me, that adults directed giant sympathetic smiles toward me, and I felt tears and pause, but I hadn't yet pieced together that I didn't fit. The fact that I couldn't walk like the kids in my class, that I wore a funky mess of plastic, metal, and Velcro braces on my legs, used a battered aluminum walker, and sped around on my hot pink wheelchair, didn't really seem worth factoring into my evaluation of myself. At least not at first. It didn't take long at all before I began to believe different things about myself. After only a few years out in the world, going to school, playing at the park and the pool, tagging along with my dad on his Saturday morning grocery runs, a narrative started to take shape before me. A hazy image that sharpened with time. First, I started to see myself as a burden on the people around me. Unlike all the other kids, being with me required alternate paths or alternate routes in problem solving. I saw it everywhere, hanging out with me meant having limited options on the playground, collaborating with dad muscles to get me into a friend's house, and doing very long bathroom breaks and helping me carry my lunch tray. I calculated that people spending time with me cost them something extra, and I wanted to spare them that high price. Starting around the age of 8, I cut friends out of my life as soon as I sensed my presence caused any extra strain. Soon I started to believe I was ugly. My body looked so different from the bodies we'd all been taught to admire, including my long Taussig nose.
Could design a time machine with all the hours of agonized over that thing. There weren't any paralyzed girls or women included in stories told on screens, through ads, or in magazine pages. I consumed and digested the culture around me, and slowly learned with certainty that I was not among those who would be needed, admired, wanted, loved, dated, or married. Not too much later, I began to see myself as weak and helpless too. With the exception of Walmart readers who, according to my child brain, didn't seem to do anything, I didn't see or know disabled people who were employed. I couldn't picture supporting myself with a quote-unquote real job or being able to pay my own bills. Most of what I saw of life felt powerfully, intrinsically inaccessible to me. How were we supposed to enter those spaces, let alone contribute to them? My glistening, glowing bubble had deflated into a spot of suds evaporating on the sidewalk. This was not my universe at all. Not only did I discover I wasn't a princess, but I was an invited intruder, a problem to push out of sight. This overwhelming history towered behind me as I tried to answer my brother's questions still hovering between us. What is the writing about? What do you hope it will bring to the world? My brain froze as my mouth started babbling, trying to synthesize, condense, smooth out the edges of some kind of response I could give. Well, I write about disability and lack of representation and the impact of inaccessibility and stigma and unemployment and I was like a woman trying to make spaghetti in the dark, destroying the kitchen as I grabbed every ingredient in the cupboard just in case it happened to be one I needed. In the midst of my verbal wandering, I inevitably reached for the word shame. The box where I had lived for so very long. The box I still find myself tumbling back into with less provocation than I'd like to admit. This is the shame that attaches so easily to a body that doesn't fit. The shame that buds, blossoms, and consumes when you believe that your existence is a burden, a blemish on the well-oiled machine of society. I tried to explain to David how much I want my writing to meet people in that shame, to lift the lid and push the source, to remind folks that their disabled bodies are not the problem here, to hold up a flag that says you are not alone. So I think that's what I'll read from that part. I think it's interesting to read that now, though, because I think in writing this book, I think that is what, and meeting people and talking with people and hearing from people, I think that's what I feel is less alone. I feel so much less alone. Meeting people and hearing their stories. Yes.
I'm wondering if we can have you to the other side of the table
Yes,
so
we
we can
can.
turn up without getting feedback.
Oh,
Like,
sure.
Or should we move the speaker over?
I thought you meant the speaker. It'd be better if we put the speaker over on that side, so.
Also do that. I don't even have
Yeah,
to
whatever
do.
you need to do. I'm going my microphone.
Okay.
Oh, so this is perfect.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, and that's perfect. I'm gonna find I'll find my second one. Yes, okay, all my post-it notes.
I'll find the right one. He just unplugged it.
Just fix this. Are we good? Does that sound good? Yes, okay.
No, not yet, no.
Maybe turn it a little bit forward. Sound actually.
There's a some baby. How old is that baby?
5 weeks.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I don't think I got out of the house for much. Oh my God, 5 weeks, this is good.
First reading.
Wow. I don't think my 3-year-old's been to a reading yet. Okay, does that feel good? You know that sound? Yeah, all right. Amen. Okay. I'm gonna read from the chapter An Ordinary Unimaginable Love Story. This is my favorite chapter to read from. It was so fun to write. When it comes to storytelling about love and romance and stories about disability, so often the two of them don't overlap, right? We keep those stories separate so often, or if they do overlap, it turns into some kind of tragic story. And I wanted to write a story that a love story about disability that was ordinary and a good story. So that's where we're going to go today. So this is starting kind of, I've covered some of my not romantic history, an early romance with a high school boyfriend, and then we're kind of moving on into new relationships. So I'm pretty sure I put more time and energy, oh, this is on page 37 for anyone wants to follow along. I'm pretty sure I put more time and energy into curating my profile than any other online dating citizen. I agonized over which pictures to use, trying to find just the right number that included my disability, that's just the right proportion, what handful of images could convey that disability was a part of me without eclipsing all of me. How could I emphasize that I loved my nieces and nephews and eating takeout on porches and my own funky style without pretending that my paralyzed body wasn't a part of all of it? How could I invite people to really see me without scaring them off? In the box designated for additional information about me, I wrote, the wheelchair thing gives me a unique perspective on life, and it doesn't slow me down much. I drive a truck, and I love hanging out with my friends around the city. I value my independence, but also appreciate the relationships I have where I feel safe and close enough to accept help from time to time. It's not awkward for me at all to speak if you have any questions about this part of me. What else? I think the most beautiful things are found in improbable places, and the most mundane moments can also be miraculous. I value authenticity and originality. I think it's important to always strive to be a kinder, more compassionate, and generous person. I'm reading this now, like, what online dating profile? This much information on it. Wow, how did you make it this far? I pondered over every word, every tone and shade. I realized very quickly that few men had put a quarter of a thought into their profiles. In fact, I'm not sure how many men who contacted me and even glanced at my carefully drafted page long enough to see the wheelchair in 2 of the 8 images. At first, I was pretty bored with the whole dance. There was the older guy with kids who only ever sent me long, pithy messages about how ordinary his life was. I found myself wondering what it might be like to be someone's stepmom, but the messages slowed, and I hardly noticed. There was the sweetie pie in the blue baseball cap who met me for ice cream on a Saturday afternoon, and clearly didn't know what to do with a first date who asked follow-up questions after every little life detail he shared. And then my parents got divorced, and I went to live with my mom. What was that like? Fine? Okay, I guess. Really? It was fine? Yeah. So anyways, that guy continued to send me dragon pun memes for weeks after our date, which still doesn't surprise me. I liked the dragon pun memes. I didn't like the one where answers to my prodding questions we didn't go on our second date. Then there was the heavily cologne fellow who didn't say a word about my wheelchair until I brought it up only an hour into our dinner. When I asked him what it meant to him that I had a disability, he deflected and minimized without missing a beat. It's not like it defines you, he said. To be fair, what an awful question to pose to a person on the first date, like out of the blue, bam, go. Also, how interesting to have this guy across the table define, for me, the place that disability had in my whole life. I don't remember what I said, but in my fantasy life, it was heavy with sarcasm. Oh, that's the role disability plays in my life. I've been hoping someone would tell me. My favorite interaction from online dating was with the scientist, a problem solver finding his great riddle on the disabled woman he met online. Really, I should have stopped messaging this guy as soon as he started educating me on my profession, teaching English, a profession that he did not share. Not even close, Mr. Science Guy. I knew this was going nowhere fast, but I was also very curious. What else might this man have to teach me? I discovered he had a plan for curing my paralysis. It turns out he had transformed his experience of type 1 diabetes through a very specific diet, which might make some sense, I would not know. And he was convinced that my ailments could also be solved, at least partially, through a similar regimen. which makes no sense, and I would know. We probably have to add some exercise to the routine, but he assured me he figured out. After a month of these fun times, I was amused, but little more. I had not felt a single spark of connection. In fact, nothing that even approximated a sizzle. I felt like an odd duck. Not necessarily because of the wheelchair in my dating profile pictures, but because something about the way I saw the world didn't match these people I'd met. Was it the wheelchair that had shaped that lens? Surely in part, right? Mixed with being the youngest of 6 kids in a family fueled by feelings and storytelling, and the understanding that we had no money, all with the backdrop of chemotherapy and surgeries and braces on my legs under the glow of Midwest in the 1980s and 1990s. All of it, forces at work, shaping me into the person who just couldn't brush by life's painful or complicated bits. My parents' divorce was fine, disability doesn't define me, the paralysis can be fixed. None of it was traumatic, it just didn't make my eyes dance. This confirmed what I'd been thinking for a while, but this time it didn't feel ominous. My story probably wouldn't include romance. I wasn't a good fit for partnering with another person, and truly, that was okay with me. I liked my story as it was. I liked who I was on my own. This was a hard-earned space I created for myself, and I was grateful to rest there. And then, one measly month into the online dating, there was Micah. I found his face while scrolling through pages of profile pictures with my mom, giggling at all of the shirtless bathroom mirror selfies. We both paused over his charming half grin. He wasn't in a bathroom, no mirrors were in sight, and he was wearing a shirt. Send him a smiley face, my mom demanded. She was giddy over his half smile. Hold on, I said, grinning back at his photo. Let's just see about this Mike at 28. As I scrolled through his profile, I felt tiny little lovebirds flopping around my head. First, he knew how to write a sentence, including the proper use of comma between 2 independent clauses connected by invention. Pretty much a seduction dance in my head. The more I read, the more I marveled. Is this a real person? Had the internet created him out of a lifetime collection of my Google searches and online shopping? This guy valued storytelling, curiosity, and artistic expression. He liked one-on-one conversations and was looking for someone who would be easy to talk to. Ding, ding, ding. And the real clincher, he made a joke reference to Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. Hello, you may have my heart right here now. Here it is, it's yours. And I sent him a smiley face. Oh. He is at home putting his toddler to bed right now. He's okay, we're gonna switch gears. I'm gonna read a part from the Real Citizens of Life. This chapter is really all about storytelling. I think when you have yourself represented in the world of storytelling, it can be difficult to articulate what it feels like to experience the lack of it, the impact of that, the power of that. And I think one of the goals that I had in this chapter was to bring that feeling to life, and give language to that feeling, and call attention to the bridge between the stories that we tell on screens and in books, and the stories we play out together in real life, to show that those are connected. The stories that we tell on screens don't stay on screens, right? If they find their way into real life and real people's lives. So that is where I'm going to pick up here. Okay, this is on page 82, the bottom of page 82. Without having the words at the time, this was the universe as I had come to understand it. On the one hand, there were the real citizens of life, the ones this whole planet was built for. Right?
I think it's a self-help.
Okay, that's smart. Okay. Okay, I'll step back just a little bit. On the one hand, there were the real citizens of life, the ones this whole planet was built for. They who were beautiful and capable and desired. They were the ones who fell in love and had careers and families and dramas at school and stories worth telling. They were worthy of jealousy, love songs, and starring roles. I knew who they were because their images flooded every screen, every magazine page, every billboard, every CD cover. They populated the sitcoms, movies, and music videos. They were the cast of Saved by the Bell, Friends, and Dawson's Creek. They were the Spice Girls and the Backstreet Boys. They were Jack and Rose, Allie and Noah. Anyone know who I'm referencing? You could, I'm on the same page, okay. Yeah, the Notebook, Titanic. And then there was me. I internalized my role early and continue to be reminded of it with consistent reinforcement. With experience and time, I learned that the best I had to offer society was to inspire the real citizens of life by smiling on the sidelines, being joyful despite my wheelchair. I was a tool for keeping them grateful and motivated to seize their days. I was here to teach them the loftier nuggets of wisdom, like how to live life to the fullest, to provide an opportunity to prove that they were really a good character. I wasn't here to fall in love, become a parent, broker the deal, crack the case, offer sex appeal, save the damsel, or be president. If I forgot my part, even for a moment, or attempted to audition for another position in the story, there was always another character to nudge me back into that little piece of tape on the stage marking my spot. As I've gotten older, I can see it even more clearly, the elaborate stage performance with assigned roles that we, as a culture, perform together. For most of us, we learn how to play our parts as we go along. We pay attention to cues. We watch how the other characters interact with us. We see what happens when we step outside of our designated roles, and soon we learn the precise parameters of the characters we play in the story. Some of us get parts as the real citizens of life, and we strive very hard to hold on to these sparkly roles, terrified of losing our positions or anxious we're about to be discovered as frauds. Or some of us hardly realize the roles that handed to us at all. What other part would we play? Most are denied these prominent roles and are sent to the margins. For a good while, I really did think I was the only one on the outside. It took some time to realize that others, many others, were there with me. For those of us playing secondary characters, we learn to fit into tiny boxes where we try our best to live without letting our arms dangle too far off the sides. When I was about 17 years old, with a freshly laminated driver's license and a new to me 1993 white Buick Century spruced up with simple hand controls, I drove myself to the bookstore. With practiced ease, I swung my wheelchair out of the car, attached the wheels, bounced into it, and felt capable and breezy as I pushed myself across the parking lot toward the front doors. When I arrived, a man and a woman were already opening the first set of doors to the shop. I thanked them as I moved towards the second set of doors, naturally arriving first. Happily, I opened the second set of doors for them, reciprocating the courtesy I had just been given. As the couple walked through, I heard the woman mutter, not too quietly, "She's a proud little thing, isn't she?" I felt the sting and heard myself laugh with surprise. What was that? Even before I had the words, I knew I'd stepped out of line. Silly me. I'd been operating under the belief that I could be the newly independent leading lady, brightly bounding through her story. But I'd already been assigned my role as the weak girl, here to affirm to the real citizens of life that they were a thoughtful pair offering a friendly hand. In my late 20s, I moved into a little house with 2 cranky cats, and Micah moved in shortly after. Maybe a year later, after seeing us do life together for month after month, my neighbor stopped us on our way out to the movies. So I have to ask, are you 2 brother and sister? He seemed genuinely puzzled, which I suppose makes sense considering he'd seen us holding hands, kissing, and flirting for the previous 12 months. As I had been busy living out my life as the star of my own romance story, his mind cycled through a whole list of possible scenarios for the girl unsuitable for romance. In the end, siblings with weird physical boundaries felt more feasible to him than a romantic partnership that included facility. How far must he stretch his imagination to see me and my chair as a legitimate romantic interest? It seems it was hardly fathomable to him. I took a beat. tilted my head, and looked back at him. No, I said, amused and not laughing. He's not my brother. During the last year of graduate school, I traveled a lot. Near the end of a road trip culminating in a visit to Albuquerque, where I presented my work at a professional conference, I'd driven 2,681 miles across the country. I rented cars, always taking 3 extra steps required to book one with hand controls. Booked hotels, put gas in my vehicle with my own money, and presented my original work to people who cared to listen. To be perfectly honest, the room wasn't packed, but you better believe I gave the most animated talk. I found my way around unfamiliar cities and felt my abilities stretch and hold me. As I was filling up a soda on my last stop, on my very last leg of my trip, I was feeling grounded and unstoppable, the star of a story about hard-earned professional fulfillment and personal peace on a solo road trip across the United States. This is also the precise moment a man I didn't know pushed a wad of 1s and 5s into my lap. I was in a wheelchair for 2 years, he said. I know what it's like. I looked at his bills, bewildered. Suddenly, I was the begging cripple of this story, useless and desperate. No, I don't feel comfortable, I said, pushing the money away. He kept talking, explaining just how much he understood, how he wanted to help people like me. His confidence in the story he was telling was louder than any other noise in the building. He was intimately familiar with the begging cripple role and stood tall in his part as the compassionate helper. Meanwhile, my brain turned into a flat white screen, searing and blank. I got back in my car, feeling so small. It is a fact that a person with a disability is significantly less likely to be gainfully employed. This represents the lived experience of millions of people. But there are other ways to tell this story, other possible turns this script could take, other scenes waiting to be written. As much as I felt strong and unstoppable on that road trip, I felt just as deflated by the never-ending brawl required to maintain a sense of dignity belonging to a group that is perpetually framed as helpless. Here's a question. What's more exhausting, being disabled or trying to shake off the roles that other people constantly expect you to fill? Too tired to answer. Disabled people have been assigned a clear part in the stage performance. We're the recipients of help and need of assistance, holding out a tin can for charity here to inspire, attempting to claim another role, a more complicated part, like the one who accepts and offers a bit of help, one who uses a chair to navigate the world and has sex, one who can't walk and isn't asking for your money, even if it's a role that feels natural and fitting, can surprise, confuse, or even irritate the other people in the performance. When you live inside of the story, it can be difficult to see this dynamic. We begin to believe things like, this is just how it is. This is how the world works, like hydrogen bonds or gravity. Forgetting that while the very first authors of ableism may be long gone, whoever they were, we are still performing these outdated roles. And guess what? Stories can change. I've got to read a section from the Complications of Kindness because this is a chapter that people often want to talk about. It seems to inspire some feelings. Where is this part? Here we go. All right, so I'm going to read you my favorite part of this chapter. I know it covers a lot of territory, but this is my favorite bit. So let's see, where am I going to start? Okay. So earlier in the chapter, I described a moment in a parking lot. Lots of things happen in parking lots in my book. I described a moment in a parking lot where I'm putting my chair together and a man runs across the parking lot yelling, "Don't fall, don't fall." And how I'm so irritated by this, and I go inside kind of feeling indignant about that interaction. And so I'm going to pick up that story. This is on the top of page 194. After the man yelled, don't fall," across the parking lot, I got a cup of coffee, pulled up to a table with yet another stack of student papers to grade. I stared blankly out of the window, my mind running loops of complaints about all those ableists making assumptions and making me feel small. When I finally snapped out of my reverie, I realized I was running late to meet my friend Joe for a movie. He would be meeting me at my house in a few minutes. I rushed to my car, whipped my chair apart, and drove home at illegal speeds. When I saw him waiting for me in the driveway, I rushed in to apologize for being late. Good grief, I'm so sorry, Joe. Why am I always late everywhere all the time? Before we leave, I just have to grab something from the house real quick. Oh, but Joe, you wouldn't believe the man in the parking lot today. As I plunged towards the house, I recounted, with the animated speed provided by caffeine and adrenaline, the man's obtuse assumptions about my capabilities. He just kept yelling, don't fall at me, I said. The sun was bright, the air was warm, and I felt strong and powerful as I recounted the man's absurdity in light of my obvious strength and agility. I arrived at the bottom of the ramp that led up to the back door of my house and like an obnoxiously sunshiny cartoon character, I threw up my arms and shouted, isn't it beautiful today? My front wheels hit the edge of the ramp and I felt my body flying through the air. Time slowed enough for me to form the thought, oh, you've got to be talking. Just as my knees hit the concrete. I had fallen hard. The worried man in the parking lot had just arrived 2 hours too early. Joe and I giggled over the irony. I got back into my chair. We went to the movie. This was not the first time I had fallen. Not by a long shot. There was the day in 8th grade when my best friend pushed me full speed across the grass as we hit a lump of dirt. I catapulted out of the chair and my friend froze as teachers rushed to the scene. The day I had my gaping niece in my arms, feeling strong as I leaned against the wall just as my legs gave out and we both crumpled to the floor. She howled as I passed her off to my sister and sped to a bathroom where I could cry alone. The first time I fell in front of Micah, leaping from my chair and dramatically, ungracefully smacking my butt against the stack of books piled next to the bed where I had intended to land. How many times had I fallen in the bathroom, my wet feet slipping just before I heard the thwack of my tailbone on the tiles? So yeah, I fall a lot. Several years ago, my friend Amanda and I were crossing the street when my front wheels hit a crack in the road and I flew out of my chair in the middle of a crosswalk. My knees hit the ground and my brain burst into 100 different thoughts, one of which was an impulse to immediately console Amanda. I'm so used to people panicking when my disabled body pushes itself into the spotlight. Don't fall, don't fall. I was desperate to convince her that I was really okay. Instead, it went like this. I scrambled back into my chair faster than I had fallen out of it, and Amanda took a beat. She didn't hover or shout, didn't seem anxious or dramatic. She just watched me settle back into my chair, and then she said, you are a fucking badass. After a lifetime of using a wheelchair to get around, I'm used to being told I'm helpless even when I know my strength. But Amanda recognized grit and has seen most people read as weak. She caught hold of my slippery dignity, protected it while I climbed up into my chair, and then handed it back intact. When I imagine the shape of kindness that actually feels like kindness, it necessarily includes the pieces of this moment with Amanda. Dignity and an unwavering understanding that falling is not the worst thing that can happen to a person. The goal is not to avoid falling or needing help. The goal is to be seen, asked, heard, believed, valued as we are, allowed to exist in these exact bodies, invited to the party, and encouraged to dance however we want to. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit to the very bottom of 196. If you want to be genuinely, actively, real kind to disabled people, invite disabled voices into your organizations, businesses, and programs. Allow disabled people to perform in more roles than the grateful recipient of generous philanthropists. Recruit disabled engineers and dancers and office administrators and comedians and lawyers and speakers and teachers to participate in your world, and do your best to make that world accessible to them. And if we insist on using the word kindness to describe this kind of inclusion, we have to recognize that inclusive kindness isn't just a favor extended to disabled people. Including disabled people is a kindness for all of us, because listening to voices that are typically silenced bring to the table nuance, endurance, creativity, beauty, innovation, and power. Okay, we're gonna just do one more, and then questions. So I'm eager to hear from you and have you have the microphone. So here we go, last section. This is from the accessibility chapter, what I mean when I talk about accessibility. So many conversations about accessibility focus on like the one moment that someone with a disability meets a barrier and then fixing that one single barrier. And I was trying to, in this chapter, bring people in on the experience of a lifetime of inaccessibility. What does that feel like over time? What is the way that a brain might interpret that over a lifetime? And kind of bring that reality to life. So here we go. This is on towards the end of page 222. Because inaccessibility over time equals what exactly? It's more than a string of inconveniences. It's more powerful than a missing ramp here and an elevator there. Although, good Lord, I'm grateful for every ramp and every elevator I see always. My experience of inaccessibility is cumulative. It's more than a line of targets to knock down. It's a way of being in the world or just outside of the world. It's a blaring message on a loudspeaker to tune out, an ideology to survive. Some days, I feel too vulnerable to leave my house, too fed up to subject myself to the gamble of strangers interacting with me, too tired to fight to occupy a corner of space. Inaccessibility over time tells me that I do not matter, I'm not wanted, do not belong, this land wasn't made for me. So I stay in, keep to myself, avoid, cancel plans, carry anxiety in each fold and bend of my body, feel very alone and trapped and helpless. I also cope. I write, laugh, develop deep friendships with a safe few, find the movie theaters and coffee shops I can access and go to them 100 times in a row. And sometimes I allow myself to be lifted up and down a flight of stairs. There are days I talk over the loudspeaker that says I'm not welcome, when I refuse to be invisible and silent. Sometimes I even forget how hard this is. All of that is true at the same time. Whenever I share a story about a shop that has a dumpster in its accessible parking spot or a restaurant that keeps its accessible entrance locked, people are quick to indignation, channeling all of their rage at this one business, listing all sorts of things I should do or what they would do to demand accessibility. You should call this number. I would tell that person off. And some days I have a bit of that fight in me, especially when I can see the big picture, that this is not just about me. Those are the days I can talk to the manager about the problems I see with the thrift store's accessible dressing room. But the rest of the time, I feel like getting out a toothbrush to clean a filthy house when I'm still trying to find a way to breathe in the room's full of toxic fumes. Even so, I choose to have faith that we are getting there, making our own weird way to an accessible future, a space that supports all of us. An accessible future is shaped by the fundamental understanding that we all have bodies, that those bodies are different from one another, and each is worthy of profound admiration, care, and respect. Aging body, the female body, the body in pain, the injured or sick body, the fat or short or asymmetrical body, the racially stigmatized body, the body that needs to go to the bathroom, the blind, deaf, paralyzed, tired, non-binary, hungry, fleeting, transitioning, seizing body. Every single one. In this future, people won't be punished, shamed, isolated, excluded, passed to the fringes, or told to go around the back or to find another toilet because of that body. Bodies in all of their variant forms will be considered, allowed, and welcomed. Our vast differences will be thought of as we design our structures, our buildings, our healthcare, our transportation, our mobility aids, our roads, our governments, our clothing, our classrooms, our spaces of work and play, our notions of love and romance, parenthood and friendships. In this future, we will not be encouraged to silence our bodies. Instead of rejecting and abusing our bodies to fit into the boxes, our boxes will be bigger and malleable. This future doesn't only recognize but honors the fact that our bodies grow and tire and rebel and tremble and fight and change and scar and defy categorization. This future won't appear out of thin air. We have to create it little by little as we practice listening to, caring for, and respecting all of our bodies. Please, let's create this world for each other. Okay. Oh, good, we've got the microphones. Okay, so truly, like any direction or path that we want to take this, I'm really eager to talk about whatever. So.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I don't have bars. I can just talk a little loud. Oh, wait, was that it? No. Yeah. How about that?
I can repeat your question. I got my own little.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay.
First off, when I describe your book to people and say that they really got to read it, but the way that I describe it usually is like you're really kind of naked in the book.
Yeah.
And I just want to I want to express my appreciation because that style of writing and that exposure, I think for all of us, disability arguments separate from this, it makes us all less isolated. And so I want to say thank you for that, because it's certainly, I finished that and I feel isolated a lot. But I will struggle with, as I've grown older and recognized more that I live in a society that in many ways has been built for me. And I, as an instructor, try to be really aware of the challenges my students face. That comes from, what it could be depression, it could be racism, it could be sexism. But then I worry that I have put them in a box. That in my mind that like, because I want to be able to speak to them, and this is a little bit along that rigor thing I was going to ask about before. I want to push students, and I want them to feel like they're struggling. I want them to feel victory, but I want them to have that struggle. But then I have the question of like, well, what if the student doesn't have food today? How hard can I push? And I guess what I'm saying is, how do we stop ourselves from paralyzing ourselves and then like not being able to move with them because we have pushed somebody into that box in our mind in the attempt to empathize, I have boxed.
Yeah. Okay. So I think let me capture the question and you tell me how I'm right track of what your question is. So thinking about as a teacher, particularly having students that experience maybe all kinds of marginalizations that you might not be familiar with yourself, and wanting them to wanting to be able to create a classroom that honors all of that and makes space for all of that without putting those students into boxes. And how do we empathize without like reinforcing those boxes?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I think that word empathy is so tricky because in my own experience, I think so often what we do when we attempt to empathize, which I think is a good impulse, like wanting to understand another person, is that we try to imagine that person's situation, and there's this big gap between our experience and theirs, and so we try to fill in all those blanks by trying to like picture the scenarios and picture those stories. And I think that often, if the original impulse to empathize is good, I think that we undermine it with that imagination piece a lot of times, because we can't know. We cannot know, right? We do not know what those person's stories are, and what their experiences are, and how they feel about them, and how they feel about them today, and how they'll feel about them tomorrow, right? Like all of that is so personal and complicated and layered and messy. And so I think that what I would encourage us to do is to hold on to that impulse of empathy and that desire to feel what someone else feels, to hold on to that impulse, but stop yourself before you start doing the imagination work and trying to fill in the gaps, and wait and listen. I think that the way that we actually learn to understand people and let them sort of exist in all of the boxes, whatever boxes, shifting boxes, is listening and being open-handed and curious and open. And sometimes that means being uncomfortable. Because I think sometimes we make that leap because we want to know so that we can know what to say, or we can know how to respond, right? And so I think that it makes sense why we do these things, right? It makes sense why we have this impulse and why we try to solve it by imagining and picturing and anticipating. But I think that often when we set to work filling in those gaps and imagining for ourselves, that's when that impulse becomes misguided or unhelpful. So practically speaking, how do you do that? Yeah.
Well, I have a follow-up that is
Yeah.
a specific thing that maybe that this could, so, in the classroom, I'm a little quirky, and I'm a bit rebellious sometimes against administration and others. And when I speak with a lot of my female colleagues, and we'll be on the same page, and I'll just say like, just don't do it, just, do what you want. Who cares what this person thinks? The response quite often in the past has been, you have no idea how hard that is. I'm just trying to hold on to some modicum of respect. So now my approach is I don't make that suggestion at all, which also might be making. So like in something more tangible like that.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Okay, so the example to sort of like lean into this further is, what's your name, by the way? Paul, okay. So Paul finds himself in situations with colleagues where speaking with like female colleagues who are maybe experiencing something, some kind of injustice of some kind, and Paul gets really fired up, or used to get really fired up, and didn't say like, this is what you should do, or this is what I.
Hold yourself, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry. Yes, okay. And then realize that was actually kind of missing the mark, and that a lot of those colleagues would say, you don't actually know what this is like. And then you kind of shifted gears and
assumed that my female colleagues in general have roadblocks that I don't have.
Yeah.
And where I want to encourage all of my colleagues to be independent. But, and to be honest, it's not just my female colleagues. I don't say this to most of my colleagues because I don't know what their experience is. But I also feel like there's something disingenuous with it. There's something from my part. There's something that we're missing out on, because a lot of my colleagues want to do that. And I want to support them. So assumptions, I guess.
Yes. Okay, so I think that like I'm guessing that the Paul's impulse to say like, you shouldn't worry about that, or you should, all of these things that you're saying to empower the people around you, is like an impulse of care and wanting to support. And I think that often the question that is missing in that, or what I would recommend, I'm not an advice person. I hate giving advice, but I'm like giving advice. So here, this is what I would want in that situation if I was a colleague, is the question, what does that mean to you? What does that feel like? Is there anything that anyone can do to support you in that? I think that the shift towards curiosity, and not like greedy curiosity, like tell me the more details, but like the curiosity of like, how however much you're willing to share, I want to know what that experience is like. And I think often people do want to be known, and understood. And so I think that pivot towards, the posture of listening can be really helpful. And maybe just the act of listening is the support that person needed to begin with, right? But that's what I would recommend. I think, and then that's actually getting us towards genuine empathy anyways, right? Because then we're not the ones filling in the gaps and trying to imagine the scenario or imagine what this means to someone. But they get to tell us what that means to them.
Is it problematic for me to assume that most of my female colleagues, because of their gender, have a different experience than I do? Is that because I'm not talking about necessarily somebody comes with me a problem and I'm like, well, it's when we're all talking about how we want things to be, and because it seems like I should, like that's such a common experience to not start there. To me, it feels like, well, then I haven't learned anything from.
To not start from my
From the
experience is different from your experience.
To not start from the assumption
Yeah,
that my female colleagues are having to overcome hurdles that I don't have.
Yeah. So Paul's asking if it's misguided or problematic to make assumptions that his female colleagues have barriers into this experience. Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I tend to think that we don't know any of the barriers around us, right? I mean, like, we just don't know. You could have someone next to you that you feel like we're very similar. You know, our life experiences must be the same, our barriers must be the same. We just don't know. I mean, I think more and more, I feel like moving through the world, every single person we encounter, even people we think we do know, I think so often we don't. And I think as much as we can curb that impulse to assume, the better. And I think that even with, I've been married to my dad for, I mean, like, we've been together for like, I'm putting my book, he's not in there. You know, we've been together for almost 8 years now, I feel like with him. Like, I cannot assume that I know where you're coming from today or this year, or, you know, I think we are all experiencing complicated, full, shifting lives, and there's a lot of things that each of us have experienced that no one in this room has seen. And so I think I would tend to err on the side of I don't know. And would you tell me? If you feel comfortable, and if not, that's fine. But I'm not going to assume. Yeah.
Have you ever, when you started working with students, like beginning of semester, have you ever just opened it up with like, what are you willing to share? Like to create those, you know, especially in the college level, we get 4 months, and it's not a full year.
Oh, right.
And so it takes half a semester for students usually to become comfortable with, like, have you found ways to speed up that process?
Okay, so the question is, and also, Paul, we should.
I'm gonna stop after the chat.
But over
this is more of a thank you rather than a question. Page 72 and 73, you bring up, what if I wasn't just a broken version of a whole person, and that the impulse to gawk at, erase, eradicate the disabled body is not an inherent human trait. You bring up a girl whose mother had a difference, and that it surprised her to have other people stare at that. My father is an amputee, and I grew up that's who he is. He was 3 when he had his farm accident. I don't have no memory of that accident, and I just am very grateful for bringing that up. It still surprises me sometimes. We went on a family vacation in Colorado, and he had his hiking shorts on, so you could see his prosthesis, and there were people looking at him just differently, and I still kind of forgot. I'm like, oh yeah, he's physically disabled. It's not that we it's not that I don't know his difficulties, it's just that it's such an inherent part of my life as well. Like I notice when people park across sidewalks, I hate that. It's like, do you know that if I was physically disabled, I would not be able to walk down this? I just notice those things because I always had to deal with them. I just thank you for putting that in there, that there's some of us that just, this is just a part of our lives.
Yeah.
It's-
Yes, thank
We
you.
don't see him, I don't see him as any different. It's-
And that's such a beautiful relationship to have with someone. Like I have that with my siblings, and it's so rare and special to have that bond with someone who could complete like everything about my body and the way that I move through the world, and is just so normal to them, and always was. And I'm sure that there's something special for your dad to be able to be his kid who sees him that.
We're involved in the amputee coalition, and of course, I can't be a peer specialist, but sometimes I talk to amputees and they talk about one wonderful person. It's like, well, when you were first experiencing your disability, but then it's neat to see that transition in the experience. Oh, yes, I'm still me. I'm still a person. So,
Well, and I forgot, so the comment was, I'm just gonna amplify you. And you correct if I did anything wrong, but the comment was about growing up with a father who had a limb difference, his leg,
amputee,
amputee, yeah. And just that feeling of growing up near him and seeing that his body is like perfectly normal and typical, and how jarring and strange it has felt for you growing up to notice the other ways that people interact and stare at that difference. And then, yes, yeah? Okay,
Yes.
cool. Thank you for sharing that.
And April is National Limb Loss and Limb Difference Month too, so.
Okay.
We have a perfect month and a half.
Great.
Hi, can you tell me what your parents or parents did and said to you to make you so sure of yourself, so self-valued, and as a single parent of a person with a different intellectual ability, what can I do to improve on her self-esteem and mine?
Role parents. Oh gosh, I feel like I really answered this. Oh, and also, thank you for this question. And the question is about parenting, and thinking about what parents can say, or give their children, especially their children with any kind of difference or disability, to make them sure of themselves and make them confident and self-assuredness. All right, I feel like I would have everything about parenting and my ideas of parenting, of course, immediately shifted as soon as I became a parent. And I can't even imagine how much, I do not know how my parents parented me. Like, I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and pretty soon, I was right after turning 1, they thought that I was going to die. They were flying me to New York City for surgeries, and the fear and trauma of that, while trying to juggle all of these other things. And I do not know how they did a day of that, honestly. And I think one of the things that is so painful for me in my very beginning days, months, years of being a parent is that feeling of like, I want to give you everything. I want you to not have a moment of your life when you're not completely immersed in love and acceptance, and that you know how beautiful and wonderful you are, right? Like I want that for him already, you know, on the playground last Saturday, and there's kids who don't want to play with him, like, right? Like, how does anyone parent a moment? So I think what I would say, and what I've been thinking a lot about, and trying to find comforting solace in my own beginning parenting experience, is that I think that my my parents, gave me the very best of what they had. Which was love. I mean, I felt loved. I felt like I was part of this whole family. I was accepted. There was not, like, my parents really didn't pay attention very much to my disability. I mean, like I mentioned in the book, like when I became paralyzed, they did not do this single accommodation to our entire house. I continued to sleep on the third floor, top bunk, like, oh, she can figure it out, right? And so there was a gift in that. There was, they gave me what they had, and there was a gift in that. And there were things that were missing from that they were not able to give me. That I had to learn later, that I came to in different ways. And I think that what I am trying to process as a parent is that inevitable, painful feeling of like, there will be things that I will miss. I will not be able to cover him and protect him every single moment of his breathing life. But I can give him all that I am and give him every gift of love that I have, and keep that connection tethered so that when something comes up that I missed or something, he experiences pain, because of course he will, that he will know that he's safe and he can come back and return to me, and we can continue to process that together. So I think, that's not very prescriptive, but I think that the obvious love and care that you have for your daughter is like emanating off of you right now at the space. She will know, and you will give her all of that, and she will receive every good gift of that. And then whatever else, right? Like whatever the other bumps are, whatever the other moments that you wish would not happen, you will still be there with that love. And she will know that she's safe there, and she can come back to you and bring that to you, and you will figure that out together, whatever that happens. But I think that's like what we can do. At least that's what I'm feeling right now, like months before my son turns 3. And I think that's what my parents did. Like I knew and know, regardless of the thing that they didn't cover or they didn't know to say or anticipate, I knew that it was loved, and safe, and enjoyed, cherished. And with your daughter, I never really knew she would have from this moment. How does anyone do it? I don't know.
You just get up when the alarm goes off and you start everything. And don't stop until your eyes close at night and they're in bed and the day is done. When you get 6 hours of sleep, you get up and you do it over every single day and don't stop. Because if you stop, their life stops, and that can't happen. Yes. And when you do collapse, you call your mom, you cry about it, and you get on the phone, you make something. That's the end of it. Just,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Oh, yes, yeah.
What are you working on now?
Ah.
What's next?
Oh, gosh. Yes, okay, the question is, what are you working on now and what's next? Well, there is a children's book coming out in 2025, because it takes forever. Children's books to read. But yeah, I wrote this book. It's called We Are the Scrappy Ones. I hung out with some teenagers with disabilities at a transitions camp in Kansas City a while ago, and I loved them. They were the coolest kids, way cooler than I was like 14 and 15, but they were awesome. But then I noticed that like whenever we did talk about disability in any way, they were very quick to use medical language and talk about it with a medical lens and think about it through the experience of hospitals. And this is when I had my surgery. This is medical narrative, and I found myself wanting to just like gather them up and like bring them into this space of belonging and community and identity and understandings of layers of their, you know, helping them write stories for themselves about their experiences, their full experiences. So I went home and I wrote a poem called We Are the Scrappy Ones. It's just about, it's sort of like an invitation or a welcoming of a sense of belonging in a community of all kinds of disabilities. And then we turned it into a children's book. So it's like 420 words long, and it's a little poem, and there's an illustrator who has an invisible disability that grew up with an invisible disability that's working on the illustrations right now, not looking out in 2025, which is really fun. You know, it's interesting that it's been an interesting ride. I was teaching forever, and then this book came out, my baby came out, and then there was this pandemic, I think one remembers that. And so like so much of the world has changed, and I've been on this sort of winding path of that, like what is next and what am I doing? And the book was optioned to be a TV show soon after it came out, and we wrote these, a co-writer and I wrote these pitches of what this book would be like as a TV show, and we pitched it to like, I can't even tell you how many places, and everyone said no. So that was a huge part of that journey, right? It's like, oh, this could be the next thing, and then it was like, no. But through that, I connected with someone in the world of film and television, and I'm getting to co-write and work on this film that's all about Judy Human and the Section 504 Center and the Center for Independent Living and like all of these things. And so I cannot get enough of it. Like I'm obsessed with working on it. It's the most fun project that I can't believe I get to be a part of. And like so much in this book is like, I want these stories out in the world. I want people to know this history. I want people to understand this experience and this greater part of human history, and like to get to work on this film that hopefully will actually make it to screens is like, it's a huge honor. And so it's called Being Human. So like keep your eye on, like, I don't know how long it takes to be like 10 years from now. There will be this movie called Being Human. Yes, I'm really excited about that too. I was telling Paul right after this book came out, like the epilogue is sort of like, it's like a pitch for a second book that I'm like, as soon, like as I'm finishing writing this book, I find out I'm pregnant and, oh, and sorry, hold on. I should have said this from the very beginning. The epilogue in the epilogue of this book, Micah was just diagnosed with cancer. You should know that Micah is doing well. I think I need to tell everyone that as soon as I see that Micah is doing well. We just passed the 3-year mark of his cancer being, like, no cancer in his body, and that's a huge milestone. So I just want everyone to know he's doing well. Yeah. Gosh, we're endlessly grateful. But all that to say, the book ends in a kind of cliffhanger sort of way, and when publishers were like, so let's get ready on that second book, and I couldn't do it. I just haven't been able to do that. And I don't know if that will be down the road, or I kind of have in my mind the different sort of memoir that I would like to write at some point, but I know like again, like Paul said, this book is very vulnerable. There's a lot of very vulnerable personal stories in here, and it is something to share that. And thinking about what else do I really want to share is a real question for me. So, not because it has been, people have been, not because of people's reactions, but just the experience of that kind of vulnerability. So for now, we are the scrappy ones and being human.
So I just wanted to add that it's so nice to be able to read this book and be relatable on a personal level and a community level and a parent level, that it's been just such a gift to our community. And there's so many individuals and parents in this room that it is just like, oh, she's singing our story.
Well, I'm serious when I say that this is a special group. Like, I felt that from like our first dinner, right? Like hearing about, what you all have been doing and talking about and the, connectedness and the collaboration and the, like genuine earnest curiosity that I have felt from so many people. There's been really special. So, for reading my book, thank you for talking about themes of my book. It's like a very beautiful thing. I'm serious. Snow globe, create the moment.
It's snowing, right?
Oh, it's Are we gonna talk Okay. I would love to sign any, yes, I'm here to sign books all day, all night, yeah.